Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Please welcome on stage the Event Director of European Utility Week and PowerGen Europe, Paddy Young.
Thank you. Well, it's that time of year again. It comes around quicker and quicker, or maybe it's just that I'm getting older. But it's my absolute pleasure to welcome everyone here on behalf of Clarion Energy to PowerGen Europe and European Utility Week 2019 here in the beautiful but slightly wet city of Paris. It's so great to be here. We started discussions, I think there's people in the room who are actually involved with those discussions, to come to Paris in 2013. We've worked very closely with the French stakeholders and with the market to come to this moment. And that makes it very special for us. And I have to say that the involvement of the likes of Think Smart Grids, probably too many to mention, have really helped us put us in this position. So it's very special for me knowing that all the work behind the scenes to come to this moment. What is also very special is the fact that this is the first co-locate in Europe. Our colleagues in Asia were before us, of PowerGen and the Utility Week. So for us, it's a culmination of us being able to deliver an end-to-end energy event. And for us, that is very important. It's been wonderful to work with both events to develop the content, develop the exhibition, to work on Initiate, to put together this program that you'll enjoy now for the next 3 days. It's really, really very special, and we're delighted with that. But one thing, the co-location is just the beginning, really just the beginning. It's enabling us to really look at a broader event with more scope. Something that's happened, the market is changing, and we see more newcomers coming into the market. And the event itself is almost organically developing into an end-to-end energy transition event. And it's important for us at Clarion to really stay on top of that. So we've been working very, very hard to make sure that the event stays relevant and continues to stay relevant for the future. And certainly you'll see something over the next 2 days that will be the next step for where we want to take these events, a part of a global development. So exciting times. Now, before we move on, I think, well, you know, this event that we put together really is helped by our partnership with Siemens. And every year I say it, and every year I mean it. They push us, they challenge us, they help us with development of content, they help us with engagement of new areas, and they do a wonderful job. And they really help this event develop. So many, many thanks for them as always. And on a personal level, again, the development of the event here in France has been made possible by a lot of people, far too many to mention, but I'd like to say Think Smart Grids have been very useful. And on a personal level, I'd like to thank Philemon Leboux, who's really given his time and really helped us engage and pointed us in the right direction here. So Philippe, thank you very much with that. Okay, that's enough of me. I'd like now to introduce someone who you'll be very probably familiar with. She's a BBC correspondent, has her own radio program, so now I'd like to introduce you the moderator for today, Sasha Twining. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paddy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, good morning, welcome. How lovely to see everybody here this morning. Can I just say thank you so much for making us part of European Utility Week. You've given us your time this morning. I promise you, we are going to give you a fantastic day here today. Before I start, though, can I just ask you to raise your hands if you managed to get lost on the way through the hall this morning? Yes. Yes, me too. It's amazing out there. Out there is where you can get hands-on, you can talk to people, you can see what's going on. In here is where the conversations will happen. In here is where we discuss where the industry is now, where the industry is going in the future, and basically how to get from A to B. So this place here is where we will talk about different areas of the industry, different parts of the industry, and what is happening right now. And we're going to bring everybody together. And I'm absolutely delighted with the people that we will have on stage here today, because without putting too fine a point on it, the people we have here are those right at the heart and at the forefront of the industry. Quite simply, when these people that we have on stage talk, it makes news in the industry. So the lineup of speakers that we have, I think, will shape the conversation as we go forward. And I'm delighted to say that you're all in the room to hear it. To hear it and also to talk about it as well. I will give you lots of opportunities as we go through today to ask lots of questions. Now, we've done that in a couple of different ways. First of all, we've used a tool called Slido. So I wonder if you could all take out your mobile phones for me, if they're not already in your hands. And this is a conference tool that you may well have come across before. It's quite simply a web-based program. If you go into your browser, if you do it now, when you think of a question, you'll be ready to ask your question. So let's get it all done and out the way now. You go into your browser, and if you go to Slido, SLI.do, that should take you straight to the website. Click your way into it, and it'll ask you for a hashtag. Careful with your hashtags, you don't know what other conference you might be joining somewhere else in the world. The one we are using, EUW PGE 2019. Click your way into that. And what should happen is it should ask you if you want to ask questions. Now, you can ask questions at any time as we go through today. I then receive your questions, and if time allows, I will try and get through as many as possible. And I fully appreciate how important it is to be able to ask questions, so I will try and ask as many as possible. I've also got microphones in the room, so we can do it that way as well. So lots of different ways for you to get involved. Believe me, this is not going to be a one-way street today. This room is where we are going to have the conversation for the future. Now, let's get going. We thought it would be a really good idea to start this morning with an overview of the industry. Let's see where we are now, and then we can work out how to get to where we would all like to be. So for a really good overview of all the challenges, the pitfalls, the possibilities, we've asked Arena here, the International Renewable Energy Agency. Please welcome the Director General, Francesco La Camera.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let me start thanking the organizer for having us here today. We think that the energy transition is just happening. And in the meantime, we know that science make clear to us that we have a relatively short time to act. This is something that is pressing our government, and at the same time is giving opportunity for the industry. I think that this time is a time for challenges, but it's also a time for exciting opportunities. You know, we have been assisting in the last year that the installed capacity of renewable systematically outpacing the traditional plant installed capacity. We have been assisting to the fact that renewables are becoming more and more convenient. So, we have naturally been in Paris talking about Europe and utilities. We see that Europe is absolutely at the forefront. You can see how the goal of the Union has been becoming more and more ambitious from 2020 and 2030. Renewable energy is going to increase to 32%. And we are proud to say that this goal has been set also thanks to the work that Arena has made for the European Union with its Europe remap. Also, the target on efficiency is very ambitious. And at the same time, the Vice President Tillerman is talking about having a reduction of 50–55% of CO2 emission. And this will be much more ambitious than the actual target of 40% and 2030. What is driving this transition? In fact, in the last decades, policy governments has been supporting the renewable through subsidies and other way to sustain the development of renewables. In fact, now, thanks to that work, we may say that the main driver to the energy transition and to reduction cost of renewables is just the market. As you can see from the slides, all renewables are falling to the area of cost of the usual traditional plants. We estimate that in the last year, for the large part of the planet, wind and solar will be the most competitive form of producing energy. We also estimate that in a few years, it will be much more convenient to build a new renewable plant instead of maintaining life an old traditional one. And there is an argument that is very strong in this moment, where we have a very short time to decrease our CO2 emission, when at the same time we have an increasing demand in Southeast Asia as in Africa and other parts of the world. So the fact that we have also to find solutions that will be ready to provide energy for people in a very short time. And on this aspect is also another advantage to go for renewables, because we may be able in 8 to 12 months having a plant of renewables, a significant one already in place providing energy for people. I've been 2 weeks ago in Singapore when they have shown me that it's possible to have in just 2 weeks 1 megawatt plant of floating solar plants. This is amazing. This is something that I think that is making the change happening, and I hope it will happen substantially rapidly. Also, the cost of storage is decreasing everywhere. Imagine in 2010, from 2018, 70% of reduction. And if you look at the last auction in Portugal, 1.5 for 1 kilowatts. In Brazil, in the average, all the auction last week, 2.2 cents for kilowatts. In the region, there's now is my own place, 4 cents for kilowatt hour, and storage includes. So definitely, price are driving this change. Naturally, we need something more than that. Concerning, if we were to provide some number, ARENA work on this topic showed that 465 terawatt hours of renewable power was sourced globally by the commercial industrial sector in 2017. In the European context, large uptake of corporate PPAs have been witnessed in the last 2 years. This focuses mostly on wind and solar, reaching over 2 gigawatts annually. To reach EU climate objective, ARENA estimates the demand for additional renewable electricity in the European commercial and industry sector will need to accelerate to 600 terawatt hours by 2030. And these are the data that we show in the slides, so you can take photo of it. ARENA estimates that it's possible to get the 90% of the CO2 reduction that we need for having an energy system that will provide to have a low carbon economy that may be online with the fact that we are not to disrupt our economy, as the IPCC reported to us. These are our estimates on 2050. We think that 75% of this result can get through renewables, 50% by energy efficiency. Naturally, it means going for a deep electrification of the energy system, going from the 20% of nowadays to the 50% in 2050. We have already seen a trend towards electrification in many systems, as you can see from the slide. And the electrification is absolutely key for getting the result we want in terms of CO2 reduction. And the electrification of the system is going for the traditional sector, but also try to bring electricity towards the end-of-use sector as a transport, as building, and other. In this respect, also hydrogen may become more and more important. We estimate an impact of 8% of contribution to the CO2 emission by hydrogen in 2050. One legend that has been built in the last year against the widespread of renewables was the fact that it was impossible to manage an energy network, a grid network, where you are starting to put renewables into the system. We think that is obviously something that is important when the share of renewables in the system is becoming very, very significant. But in the past, was said that just 10% of renewable into the system because of the intermittency and variability may provide difficulties. In fact, the experience show that this is not happening. And we have a country as Portugal that has achieved 30% of renewable into the system, Spain and Texas and United States more than 20%, Germany has witnessed more than 45%. So it's absolutely possible for where the share is now above certain limits to having the renewable already in the system. We have also a country with 100% renewable, where hydro is there, has been easier for countries like Costa Rica, like Uruguay, Finland, and others, going for 100% of renewables as their policy goal. Naturally, when we are talking about having more renewable into the system, we have to think that thing has to be considered. We have the generation, the transmission, the distribution, and then the consumer. First of all, the role of the consumer will be quite different in respect of the past. So the consumer will become a very active actor in how the energy system will be managed. And naturally, we have to start to understand that the system where renewables are still operating is a system that has been built for the conventional form of producing energy. So when we are looking to the future, we have to also to think that the system has to take into consideration the fact that renewables are becoming the most important source of energy for our system. This means that new technology, how many of these exciting ideas in a year around, has been very nice to have the chance for having a brief tour, say how much the people is working for getting to be done. We have to think about new market design and regulations that are still anchored to the past. We have to think about innovative operational practice, a new business model. We as Arena, we are trying to give a contribute to this discussion. We have provided with 30 different possible solutions on better integrate the renewable into the system. This is our blueprint book that you can access easily on our website. Naturally, when we talk about this, we talk about also investments. And we see how 110 US trillion will be needed from now to 2050 to get where we are. This means an increasing of 15 trillion with what we refer to the current policy in act. In easier number, we have to go from the $330 billion in investment in renewables to $750 billion per year of investment in renewables. These are big numbers, naturally, that has to be distributed to more renewable into the system, less traditional fuel, more energy efficiency, as you can see from these slides. And naturally, this will mean investment in all the area of the planet. And one, we can see that the most of the investment will happen in Southeast Asia, but all the area will need to invest for making this change possible. But what is important to say when we look at this number that may appear to be large numbers, that we, as ARENA, we estimate that for every dollar of this investment, if we consider the externalities, the elimination of these subsidies to coal, we may have a return from $3 to $7 for $1 spent. So this investment are economically absolutely viable. We estimate also that you have been always listened to people say that going for renewable will mean a loss of employment. It's just the opposite. The data show that the net impact of renewables is a positive number. We have now 11 million people working, and I'm talking about net number. So the job loss and the job added, the difference, that are working with renewables. So substantially, saying that going for renewable means having less jobs is just a myth of the past. The actual data say exactly the opposite. And when we talk about the economic impact, we have said about the return, but this will be positive also when we talk about the strange number of the GDP. So we estimate that in 2050 we will have an increase of more 2.5% in our GDP moving to renewables. So I think that there is no other words to say. The transition is there. Event like here today show that there is a lot of people working on making the change possible. What I wish to say at the end, please work with ARENA. We are opening more and more to the private world. We have this coalition for action where I hope that you will take active part in the next future. We also announced with UNDP, C4All, and the GCF, this climate investment platform where we'll work in the next future. Really, please work with us. Say what ARENA can do for you and make the changes possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Francesco, thank you very much. Thank you. Amazing numbers there. For every dollar of investment, a $3 to $7 return, and the increase in jobs as well. And the plea, work with ARENA. Let's get into a bit more detail now and look at how we scale up to make that energy transition. This is one of the first of the keynotes today where we start to look at the challenges and the possibilities in different parts of the industry. And we're going to take you right the way through before our discussion panel later this morning. So I'm very pleased to say now, coming from Enedis, the CEO, Philippe Monlebout. Philippe.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's okay? No? Okay. Seems to be better now, yeah? No? Okay. Maybe it's better with this microphone, no? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, well, I'm always excited to take part to the European Utility Week. Each year, European Utility Week is growing, and it's very, very satisfying to be the privileged witness of the dynamism of our energy industry. 4 years after Paris Agreement, the timing of this edition is quite remarkable for all actors of the energy sector. First of all, I would like to say because it's taking place in Paris, and thank you to Paddy and his team to have organized it here in Paris. It has been a huge challenge, but we worked hard to deliver it. But first of all, I would like to say that it's remarkable because when we look at the environment, the fourth legislative package, Clean Energy for All Europeans, has been formally adopted and published a few months ago. Main European objectives in terms of climate and energy are set for 2030, supporting the roadmap towards a neutral carbon European economy by 2050. A new European Commission, it has been just said by Francesco, is about to take office with a new executive vice president in charge of climate policy and the European Green Deal. These are very strong messages that we, Europeans, are sending. We intend to remain at the global forefront of climate and energy transition initiatives. So my speech today will therefore focus on energy transition with the main question that everyone asks himself. Shall we be ready to meet our 2030 horizon targets? And what are our industrial assets and challenges in order to meet this collective challenge? As chairman of the management board of Enedis, the major French DSO, 95% in France, I will from time to time illustrate my point of view with some example taken from our French context and our own experience. First of all, I would like to say that I think it's important to share together the fact that energy transition no longer stands at the proof of concept stage, but it is already an industrial reality. Some main features. Production capacity and power generation from renewable sources are increasing every day. The former presentation by Francisco illustrated it very clearly. In parallel, we see a move towards decentralization of energy. Each year, for example, at Enedis, we connect to the grid more than 50,000 new local producers, which comes after 500,000 producers already connected to the grid. Consumer, as it has been said, also start to play an active role, a very active role. There are already millions of self-consumers in Europe. In France, their number is doubling year after year. Last year it doubled, and it will be probably the same on next year's. Along with self-consumption, storage facilities are also growing. Nearly 5,000 batteries coupled to power grids we operate. Smart meters have become a reality all over the world now. More than 22 million of low-voltage customers are equipped with our Linky smart meters here in France. And thanks to the development of smart meters, we're also seeing a takeoff of the empowerment of consumers and their power suppliers, as well as local authority. I will come back on this subject. Innovative offers from energy suppliers are multiplying based on our smart meter technology. Power data are available for our local authorities, allowing them, of course, to better design and control their energy policy. In the transport sector, which accounts for, you all know that, for 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions, transition to new decarbonated mobility technologies is underway. Electric vehicle sales are rising. European framework is already fully established. Entire fleet of buses are already electrified. Electric mobility progressively enters in the industrial phase. So we have entered into a new reality already, as I said, with a change of scale now taking place. The energy transition has an industrial dimension. Let's see our environment here in this European Utility Week as it already expands progressively in our daily life. So let's coming back now to my first question and my introductive question. Shall we be ready to meet our main objectives in terms of climate and energy in 2030? To answer this question, let us first project ourselves in 2030 for a few minutes. I say projection, I don't say designing a future, I say projection. Just for France, we anticipate more than 100 gigawatt capacity of renewables in priority to replace, of course, existing fossil fuel power plants. In some scenarios, we also anticipate about 8 gigawatt of self-consumption. 6 gigawatt of flexibilities, and about 5 million of electric vehicles along with 7 million of charging points. Huge number, as you were saying, just by introducing my speech. At a European scale, smart grid technologies, including smart meters, will have been fully deployed by 2030, of course. The expected arrival of 5G communication will allow to accelerate the developments of the Internet of Things, and therefore the potential of smart grids. Electric mobility, with the numbers I tackled, of course, will be developed. Several factors will have already accelerated this evolution. The changes we can observe in prices of battery packs and control systems, electric vehicles to be much more competitive with fossil fuel vehicles in 2025. Smart charging solutions, interoperability, will be probably definitively generalized. Flexibilities today seems to be a challenge. I think by 2030 it will be much more than a reality. It will be something competitive on our business of the net power grids. They will take an important place. Most of local power generated from distributed energy resources is consumed or stored locally, thanks to the massive development of self-consumption, or stored locally, thanks to technological progress made in batteries and electric mobility. This is our next framework. Power grids infrastructures are able to manage increasing power reverse flows from distribution to transmission grids, allowing to reapply local production to areas of higher consumption. European territories are but will be even more interconnected through both power transmission and distribution grids. Finally, a very important, I think, topic is power data management. Power data management has already reached its industrial dimension, I would like to say. Power data are used for energy efficiency purposes by all stakeholders already now. Local communities, building renovation companies, or energy services companies, unlocking the huge energy efficiency potential downstream the meter. We have already seen that on the former slides. So now, after this quick journey to the future, if we go back to 2019, shall we be ready for in 2030? Well, my answer, you already, all the answer is obviously yes. But some huge trends are already present also in this form of future. The political will is there, everywhere, in each country. This is very important, of course, at European level. Societal expectations are strong with climate urgency on the agenda. This is also, I would say, a new trend which is very strong and deeply now in the environment and our customer environment. And I'm sincerely very confident in our collective industrial strength to meet these exciting challenges, particularly through the already ongoing deployment of smart grid solutions. Just with regard to Enedis, our smart metering program will be fully deployed by 2022, 8 years far before 2030. In the light of digital revolution and artificial intelligence, quite a long period of time. Recent developments in the empowerment of market players will probably sharply accelerate in the near future. First and foremost, customers, consistent with the ambition of the revised European directive and new electricity market rules which put consumers at the heart of the energy transition. Beyond smart meters, smart grids are already a daily reality for our grid operation and will strengthen in the years to come. It's a reality all over the world. I was just in Singapore a couple of days ago, and we see that everywhere in the world, smart meters have already becoming, and smart grids, of course, the new reality of each TSO and each country. Artificial intelligence and data processing solutions are also already operational for network management. Production and consumption flexibilities are being tested. They will provide faster and cheaper connection, of course. The design of the networks will evolve progressively to adapt to the development of renewable energies, EV mobility, and flexibilities. Just imagine, our energy smart grid rollout aims to be completed by 2022. And we're already seeing today power distribution grids we operate become more and more flexible. We are therefore convinced of the capacity of electricity grids to support the acceleration of renewable energy, self-consumption, and electric mobility. This is my conviction, and I'm sure we share it. This is, especially in France, something very important. So facilitating the achievement of energy transition goals is a great responsibility. I think we all know that. This brings us back to meeting expectation and requirements for all energy transition actors, prosumers, as it had been said, and self-consumers, power suppliers and other market actors, as well as from other sectors such as transport, building and industrial sectors that need to reduce their greenhouse gases emission. Meanwhile, we need also to ensure the excellence of our core business, our industrial performance as a power grid operator, ensuring their resilience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not only in case of severe weather events, of course it will occur, but cybersecurity today represents already now one of our major challenges in order to guarantee the safety of our industrial chain, including control rooms, servers, and data centers. At the same time, in a digital world, we are seeing a sharp increase of requirements from our stakeholders for reliability and availability of power data, from customers for whom power data measured by power grid companies is the trusted reference, from suppliers, especially for billing reasons, but not only, and from local communities for monitoring their local climate plan. As regulated power grid companies, our responsibility is, of course, to prepare the future in a responsible way by optimizing grid costs for the whole community. But more than that, our responsibility is primarily the one of an industrial company, namely to meet power market and energy transition actors' expectations where and when they are needed. In order to be, as I used to say, time to market relevant, this cannot be achieved alone. Just see the number of people here in this room, and this is, in order to succeed, our ambition is to become a leading industrial partner for every energy market player and energy transition actor in order to co-create solutions and make the widespread development possible of energy transition. Just as we have already experienced with the deployment of smart grid solutions on an industrial scale, they are the result of many smart grids demonstrators in which we participate alongside with our other European DSOs, TSOs, power device manufacturers, suppliers, market players, local communities and consumers, with the constant support of the European Commission. This has been something very strong to be able to tackle these new challenges. With our fellow colleagues from RTE, the French TSO, we have also contributed to structure a smart grid sector within Think Smart Grids association, which brings together 100 of various actors covering the entire chain of smart grid expertise, R&D centers, universities, startup manufacturers of electrical equipment and storage device. Also, regulation plays a significant role. We all know that, of course. Sharing the business model with regulator as well as prospective industrial scenarios is of premier importance, not only for regulated companies, but also for all power market actors. This is something very relevant. We used to work with our regulator, of course, in France, because of the new design of the tariff, because of the impact of the tariff on the, of course, on the consumers. These are huge challenges we have to share with our regulator. Finally, I used to say that energy transition induces a full transformation of all our power grid companies' activities, bringing both challenges and opportunities, as it has been said, to all our business lines. It enriches or facilitates existing businesses such as network supervision, customer relation, cartography, or network planning. But new activities are also emerging, such as data analysis, hypervision of IT chains, or fleets, or connected objects. European DSOs are already fully committed to giving an industrial reality to this transformation. With regard to entities, we cooperate closely with our European DSO colleagues within EDSO for Smart Grids. EDSO for Smart Grids is, well, led by the chairman, Christian Buchel, who will tell you more about our common vision through EDSO. As a conclusion, energy transition, as I said, is entering its industrialization phase in all sectors concerned by reduction of greenhouse gases emissions. In order to meet our main climate and energy objectives in 2030, power grid companies have an industrial responsibility of both power market enablers as well as energy transition enablers. We are ready. We are ready to develop wider partnerships in order to fasten the integration of new technologies to the power system, to co-create the industrial solutions of tomorrow, and to enable to bring out and spread new business models, accelerating energy transition all over the world too. These are strong opportunities. We must keep in mind that success of energy transition in Europe is also a global issue. Around the world, the lines in favor of energy transition are moving forward. It has been illustrated on the former slides. Calls for tenders for smart metering system, microgrids, EV mobility and storage solution are multiplying. They represent global growth opportunities for our European industry. In the same time, the apparent paradox of energy transition is that we need also to focus on very local issues. Energy transition goes along valorization of local energy potential as well as new consumer trends, such as the sharing of users at a very local scale. Every European citizen and economic, private or public actors must be able to become, it has been already said, a player in the energy transition with access to the necessary tools, solutions and services in acceptable economic and social conditions and in all territories, because energy transition will take place in the territories. The key factors of success of energy transition is to ensure that no one is left aside on the road towards energy transition, neither at a global nor at a local scale. The willingness of our European power industry to continue its commitment to energy transition, not only in Europe but also beyond our borders, is a very strong message for the future. Thank you for your attention.
Philippe, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very delighted to say you're going to be joining our panel a little bit later as well. So any questions for Philippe you can address later. I'm sure we'll be talking about energy security and how to harness all the different actors and the players that he was talking about. Talking of which, what we're going to do now is talk about populations as a whole. All of us in this room know the absolute desire for transition. We know how much this is talked about in the news. We know how many times, how many column inches, how many minutes, how many hours on television this whole issue gets, what the debate is like. We know that that is being talked about. So how do you harness that power? How do you get public opinion with you, the public opinion that has the desire? How do you harness that desire and take it forward in the best way possible with all the different players, all the different actors on board? Well, that's what we are going to talk about now, and I'm delighted to say that we are going to bring on stage now the CEO of Smart Infrastructure and also a member of the managing board at Siemens. Please welcome on stage Cedric Nijker. Cedric, thank you.
Check. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Hello? Yes? No? Yes, good. So, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. And Francesca, we're doing this. I mean, we've been together in Singapore 2 weeks ago and did nearly the same presentation, but this time it's going to be much, much more exciting than last time, right? We're going to try to put it up a bit. So I'm going to take Francesco's element and say, look, we actually need more renewables, we need more electrification, and we need actually more technology. So I want to do a little test with you guys. I want to wake you up a bit. And I want to do a test which we did together in Singapore in front of the energy community in Asia. And actually a test which we also did in my management team. So I took 500 of my most senior Siemens manager and I showed them a little film. So I don't know if this works or not. This doesn't work. I need 3 mics. All right. I'll try with 3 mics. Hello, is this better? Yeah, it works. Whatever works. All right. So I'll show you a little film. That's me. And if we could show the film, that would be fantastic. Hello, technically. All right, let me show the film. Perfect. All right, I asked that question to my management team, and I asked it to all of the Asian energy executives. And the simple reason was that the hottest 4 years are in the last 5 years which we had. And not only that, actually the hottest 20 years were in the last 22 years. So something is happening. And my question was, I mean, all of you are actually responsible for something. Can you show me the following thing? And I need to, so tell me if we're doing too much, you're putting your hand here. If you're saying we're doing just enough, put your hand here. And if you're thinking we're not doing enough, put your hand up. If you could just do this, and it's the only thing I'm going to ask for you today, perfect. All right. So I get exactly the same. Actually, Francesco, you're thinking, no, that's we're doing enough, so that's okay. But it's a good part. The main thing is that we are thinking of this all the time, are thinking we're not doing enough. And I want to share with you what are we doing at Siemens, or what are we doing in general to be able to address some of those issues. Now, the main idea is if we don't do nothing, and we know this, the temperature will rise and we will have issues. The thing which I'm trying to convey also, and when we were together in Singapore, was the following is, look, most of the climate change will be decided in big urban areas, right? In urban areas. And I just came back from China. If you think about it, we're here in Paris. I've been to Shenzhen. I don't know if any of you have been to Shenzhen. It used to be a little fisher village just 30 years ago. It's now 12 million people. We have now an urban population in China of 1 billion people alone, right? There will be more than 200 cities, more than 1 million people, which will be existing in China. And if you look at the Beijing-Hebei area, it's going to be more than 130 million people living there. So we need to see, okay, why is that an issue? Why is it a problem? Because the population, and if we look at Paris, if we look at Europe, we're privileged. We have relatively small cities. But even if we have small cities, we waste a lot of resources. So I'm going to give you another example. I used to live in New York. I think, Francesco, you used to live in New York also. You just came back from New York when we talked last time. Is that actually, do you know how much resources a New Yorker compared to somebody in Jakarta uses? 20 times more. A New Yorker, and I used to be in New York, and uses 20 times more resources than somebody in Jakarta. That means if urbanization goes to 200 cities with more than 1 million people, we have to do something, especially also in Europe, in which we look at how can we actually be more sort of thoughtful about with the resources we actually have. What are the main things we do? So my point, and I basically give that sort of view, and I normally did a little game. I said, so who has a bottle of water in this room? So if you raise a bottle of water in this room, New York consumes 5 billion liters of water every day. And if you put little bottles of water one over the next, that would mean that in New York you would reach the moon every day with resources which you're using. So we have to think differently. And my whole speech, and this is sort of an entry speech, is should we be concerned of what's going on? I mean, we're all agreeing, yes. Should we have fear? Perhaps. Should we be panicked? No. That's the main message and the positive message of what I'm going to try to convey and talk to you about. Why? I'll go quickly through it. The first thing and the good news is, and that was the great presentation we just heard, we already started. So I have 4 kids, and my kids ask me, Dad, you're working for Siemens, are you doing enough to actually give me a world which is better than the world you inherited? And I said, well, look around. There are certain things which are happening already. We talked about wind turbines, we talk about solar energy, but when we talk to our kids, when they think about renewables, they think of e-cars. And if we look at e-cars at the moment, we basically are using quite a bit of e-cars all around. The problem, however, we have is that the amount of renewables, the share of the amount of renewables is actually pretty low still. Germany's shares of renewable is at the moment 38% of the total energy mix. It's going to go by 2030 to 45%. So that sounds okay, but I'm going to share with you that because it's only electricity, it is not the complete sort of energy mix which we have in total. So the key thing is we need to actually look at how can we move more and more sectors to be electrified. And this is just an example. Today we only have 6 million e-cars at the moment. And we have only, 30 million, we have 600,000 charging outlets, of which 40,000 actually Shell is going to provide to us. So we're doing little things. We're putting solar up, we're putting wind up, we're trying to go into the e-mobility space. So there are things which are happening at the moment which are going in the right direction. We even think about how can we actually accelerate this. The problem is if you look at e-cars, as soon as you put more than 5 sort of high-speed chargers or AC chargers in, you have to dig up the roads. So we need to be more creative and think, can we work with startups? And Nortje is going to talk about this. This is a startup, we in Siemens work about it. So you can actually charge your car in a pole. So my first message is, something is happening, we're doing the first step, and it's going in the right direction. My second message is, well, you need to actually have a strategy. And we just heard about the strategy. The strategy is we need to decarbonize. That's our first D. We need to decentralize the energy systems because the energy systems are really sort of changing pretty dramatically, and we need to actually digitalize it. My example, we talked about 500,000 sort of power producers which we have in France at the moment. In Germany, I'm half French, half German, in 1990 we had 1,000 power plants. 1,000 power plants. And we had 4 mathematicians which were calculating when France was playing Germany in the finals and when a lot of energy was needed. Now the reality is today we have more than 2 million power producers. And when you have 2 million power producers, the electric grids have not been designed to be able to take all of those energy influx and output in there. So we need to say, how can we actually do this? How can we build an infrastructure which is capable of doing this? And the view we have is that we're saying we need to include the buildings. We need to include the power, the prosumers, the producers and consumers into this energy mix. So the idea is how can you combine grids and how can you combine buildings? 38% of worldwide energy is being used in buildings. Nearly half of this is being wasted. We have to make these elements more and more intelligent to be able to be combined. And I'll give you an example. I'm actually going to Dubai after this day today. In Dubai, we're building the Expo. It's supposed to be the biggest and greenest expo ever done. And if you look at it, would you build an expo in the middle of a desert and make it the greenest ever? You wouldn't. So the only way you actually can do it is if you're saying, I'm going to sort of digitalize this infrastructure and then make it as green as possible. So we're putting in hydrogen, we're combining access control, we're combining energy consumption, cooling, we're combining water consumption, all through the same systems to be able to optimize these capabilities. And this is just an example of what we're showing you. So the idea is the following is, A, we've started to do something. B, we have to actually look at a strategy of really sort of decarbonizing, decentralizing, and digitalizing to be able to do this. The third one, and this is what Francesco was talking about it early on, we have to think much bigger. We have to tear the silos down. What is meant by this? And a similar slide was shown. This is the European total energy consumption. Total energy consumption. Only a third
or actually 22% is power, is electrified. And only a third of this is actually renewables. So even if we increase dramatically the amount of renewables, we talked about 100 gig which we're adding to the network, it's not enough. We need to actually go into heating and cooling to be able to electrify it first. So in order to have an impact, we need to electrify mobility, we need to electrify heating and cooling, and then we need to put more renewables in the mix. That's the fundamental assumptions which we need to do. The idea of sector coupling is the only way we're going to have an impact on what we promised for the Paris Accords. And this is the example, is if you look at the same presentation I have, is the share of the electricity production of renewable is 38%, for example, in Germany, but it's only 17% of total energy consumption. So my wish today is not only to put as much possibility of putting as much electricity consumption into renewables, but to make more and more things actually electrified. So how do we do it? What's the call for action? So I'm going to give you 3 examples of what we did and just give you sort of that example. The first one is you have to start with yourself. So we in Siemens, just to give you an overview, committed to be completely carbon neutral. We have 380,000 employees. We're in 200 countries around the world. We will be carbon neutral by 2030. How do we do this? We actually buy a lot of renewables for our infrastructure. We put decentralized energy system on all of our manufacturing plants, and we basically electrify also our fleet of cars, 48,000 cars which are being electrified. So we start with ourselves and say, what can we as a company do before we tell anyone what they should do, what we can do ourselves. And we're putting 100 million euros to be able to actually achieve that. So that's the first one, is we want to actually be carbon neutral by 2030. Then there's the next thing. What technology do we have which we could offer you to have an impact? And we calculated that 609 million metric tons of CO2 is being reduced by technology Siemens produces. Wind turbines, more efficient gas turbines, more efficient distribution grids, reduction of electricity in buildings, which are in our portfolio, which we can make available for you to be able to have that reduction in the infrastructure, in the carbon tons. And I'll give you a couple of examples. This is Finland. Let me go to Finland. In Finland, this is the biggest shopping center in Finland. It's called Selo. The biggest shopping center in Finland says, look, I need to attract, in this age of digitalization, I need to attract people to come here, so I want to be carbon neutral. So we worked with them to not only put solar, and there's a lot of sun in summer in Finland, not in winter, but a lot in summer. How do we put solar in, and how do we put batteries in to be able to store it? So we reduced with LEDs, etc. We made it a LED building, LED platinum building, but we also put a battery storage in, which we connected to the Finnish grid. So excess capacity of this shopping center, which is renewables, can be sold back to the Finnish grid. And the Finnish grid can use this battery to actually store, or to basically stabilize to 50 hertz the grid environment. So what I was talking about is we are using technology not only to reduce energy consumption, to trade energy, and also to stabilize the grid which is there. We're building basically a virtual power plant. That's one example. The second example we have is actually the metro line in Paris. So if you go to Paris, we're automating at the moment the metro line in Paris by having it driverless. And the idea is not to save people which are actually in the metro, but to increase actually the amount of trains you can put through the same metro line. We can increase by 20% the amount of people which actually can take sort of public transportation. That has a huge impact on the utilization of basically the public transport environment. So we can make assets more intelligent by putting automatization and capabilities in there. And my joke was, we've been doing metro lines for quite a while here in France. This is the first one in the Exposition Internationale d'Électricité. But the key idea is we have technology which we can continuously put and bring in the same direction forward. The other one is of course, we're putting a lot of wind energy in. This is a 1 gig park which we're building together in France in an offshore environment. And I don't know if you know, but basically the new generation of wind turbines will actually be the size of the Tour Eiffel. I mean, they're huge, the 10 megawatt ones. So if you go out there, the first thing I did when I joined Siemens is to actually go to an offshore field and just see the size of what humankind is actually building. So the 3 projects I was sharing with you are 3 different types. One is energy saving, making basically buildings an active part of the energy grid. The second example was actually taking our infrastructure and making it smarter by automating it. The third one is to put more renewables in so that we have those capabilities. The problem we have, the main problem is how do you store excess energy? It's not always, you don't always have wind, you don't always have sun. Germany wastes more than €1 billion, and it's going to go to €2 billion of wind energy which is being produced in the north, which cannot be consumed in the south. We switched off our atomic reactors. We are now going to basically having lignite to do a lot of the electricity production, and we cannot store or transport most of the energy we produce. So the idea is we need to think on how to store energy. So Siemens has created a joint venture with the #1 providers of utility-based battery storage to be able to store it. But batteries only can do one thing. The one element which we're actually working with the Canadian government, is to store energy in heat. So France is a great example. Every place in France, basically the heaters are electric heaters. Electric heaters. So if you would connect through smart grids, most people talk about smart grid when they look at meter data management, but if you would connect those heaters, you could store by just 1 degree up, you could store a lot of energy which you wouldn't be able to store in any way, shape, or form. So in Canada, the idea is we will not build new power plants because we will store the energy in heat, really coupling the sectors. These are examples on, as I said, technology which we have to work with you to be able to actually make them real and actually bring them forward. And my last part is the following one. Start with yourself, save and apply as much technology as you can. Share the technology and work with others to be able to say, look, this is technology we have and we want to make available to you. But the third one is that we will have to work together. There's not a single company in this room which will be able to solve those elements. The next presentation will be work with startups together, and I'll give you an example. We created, for example, this ecosystem in Berlin. We invited around energy not only Siemens, small and medium companies, but also startups to work together. We will invest together with the city of Berlin more than €2 billion to build such an ecosystem to solve those problems jointly. So I went back, I started with a video and asking you, are we doing enough? Are we doing enough to be able to do this? I gave you a view, it might look like we're doing enough, but it doesn't feel like it with the temperature still rising. We have a strategy, we know where we're going, we know that we have to do sector coupling. I wanted to share with you what Siemens does. We start with our own technology applied to ourselves. In the US, you call it eat your own dog food. In France, you will call it drink your own champagne, right? Use your own technology. Second one, make sure that the technology you have is being used by others. Second point. Third part, why are we here today? We have to work together. And I have this picture, it's actually not my daughter, but as I said, I have 4 kids. My daughter goes every Friday for the Friday for Future, and she looks at me and says, "Wow, you're one of these big shots executive. I don't know if you're doing enough. I think you're not doing enough. It doesn't feel like you're doing enough." So my little part was not to only present to you Siemens technology and how great we are. My key sort of appeal to all of you is whatever we think we're doing, it's not enough. And we have to do more. And we have to push and we have to think. Because if we, Siemens being a technology company, if you as utilities, as startups, as different sort of also legislator, are not putting everything we need to, we will not actually get to our promise and give a world back to our kids, which is better than the world which we inherited. So that's the key sort of 20 minutes I wanted to share with you and what we're doing about this. And I wanted to thank you for listening to me. And I had 3 mics, so I hope you could actually hear me all around the place. All right? Thanks.
Cedric, thank you very much. Really interesting, really fascinating presentation. I just wonder, because you're showing so many pictures of like new technology, the new shopping centres, the new way of doing things. How much of a challenge is it to retrofit, to bring in that technology that you're talking about, when we're in an environment in Paris, where I come from, in London, where we have aging buildings, we have historical buildings as well.
The good news is you can make bigger savings by retrofitting than actually new buildings, because you go from the start, there's so much sort of energy you can save. I give you an example. The Cello shopping center was retrofitted to be the greenest shopping center in Europe, and we actually put financing to it. So we basically said the shopping center didn't spend $1. We said we will finance the whole project by reducing your energy cost, and we will take a cut of it. We had to work with the legislator to be able to allow to trade the energy, so that was sort of the capability we have. But the same, I showed you Siemensstadt. It's actually a part of Siemens, or a part of the town of Berlin is called Siemens Town. It's 100 years old, and we want to prove that we can build a completely green campus on an area which is more than 100 years old. So back to your question, a lot can be done for brownfield. It's more difficult, but that's where you need to have a bit sort of ideas and technology of what you want to do. But there's quite a few things you can actually achieve.
You need to be very agile. Now, you said you wanted everyone to work together. Are you and your team here and happy to maybe people
That's
come?
why we're here, absolutely.
Fantastic.
So whenever you see somebody from Siemens, grab them and say, Cedric promised me that you're going to help me. So let's see if it works.
You heard it here. Cedric, thank you very much. Thank you. Cedric was talking a lot about the startups, about how we can bring in new technology, but also with the fresh new ideas and the new ideas that are so desperately needed. Now, you may well have seen, as you've walked around the hall already today, the great big signs for Initiate, and maybe have wondered what that is. Maybe you're new this year and thought, okay, what is this particular program? Should I be part of it? I'm pretty sure my next speaker will say, absolutely, yes, you should be part of it, and you should be having conversations with them. So please, from Initiate, a startup investment consultant, please welcome on stage Noortje van Heest. Noortje, thank you.
All right. Hi, can you hear me all? Yes, the mic's working? Thank you, Sasha, for introducing me. Today I would like to talk to you about Initiate and investing in early stage tech. Because the world is changing in some really profound ways. And I worry that investors and industry leaders are currently not paying enough attention to some of the biggest drivers of change. I believe that startups with innovative technologies are the driving force of the energy transition, and that investors and industry leaders should do more to give them a chance. My name is Noortje van Heist. I'm a startup investment consultant at Energy Investment Management BV. In my daily activities, I work on the financial due diligence analysis of wind, solar, and bioenergy projects. I advise cleantech startups, and I'm involved in the Dutch Cleantech Challenge and the Indonesian Energy Innovation Challenge. I also have extended experience in the startup industry at Get in the Ring, a global startup pitching competition, a Known Group, a technology scouting company, and the Erasmus Center for Entrepreneurship. In the past century, the energy sector has changed profoundly. Innovation in the field of renewable and alternative energy has been stimulated by the energy crisis of the 1970s and by recent concerns on climate change and energy security. Because we can no longer ignore a necessity of a global energy transition. The latest IPCC report indicated that such a shift is urgently needed in order to limit the rise in average global surface temperature below 2 or even 1.5 degrees. And as investigated by Bloomberg, renewables will make up 90% of the European electricity mix by 2040, while the global power demand will rise with 62% between now and 2050. Earlier analysis of the future energy pathway show that it's technically possible to achieve the 7th Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations, focused on clean energy. electric utilities, and industry leaders, as incumbent actors, however, face a massive challenge in order to find new ways of creating, delivering, and capturing value from renewable energy technologies. Technological innovation, notably in the field of renewable energy, has the potential to drive this transition. Innovation is the principal source of economic growth and a key source of new employment opportunities and skills, as well as providing potential for realizing environmental benefits. And while innovations are being developed within the existing energy sector, the transition is not happening fast enough. Research addresses numerous reasons for this phenomenon, one of which is a strong need for commercialization of new clean energy technologies. And startups are an important source of these technologies. As a young professional in the energy sector, every day I see innovations with a lot of potential. The drivers of these entrepreneurs are similar to my own. They want to contribute to a better sustainable future and make impact. And they have developed the technologies to do so. One example of such a company is Hight Solar. Hight Solar has developed a production technology for producing flexible, lightweight, thin-film silicon sonar modules. Their product is an ideal solution for large flat roofs that are structurally too weak to hold the weight of traditional solar panels. Also, the Hight Solar cells are applicable to surfaces that are highly curved, which are normally also not suited for traditional solar panels. However, especially in the capital-intensive energy sector, such ventures like Hight Solar face a massive funding gap around the demonstration and first commercial stages of the project. This funding gap around the commercialization stage has been referred to as the Valley of Death. In the case of Hight Solar, the large utility company that partly owned the business recently decided to sell all its shares. Luckily, there was a business angel that showed his interest and made a restart possible. He invested in the company and is now active in the day-to-day business. To date, energy investment activities are not aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Early-stage venture capital and private equity investments in renewable energy technologies even declined, while substantial increases are needed in order to combat climate change. Distinctive characteristics of the renewable energy sector, such as its high technological risks and capital intensity, are reasons why investors are not feeling comfortable of investing in these ventures. As part of my master in global business and sustainability at the Erasmus University, I'm conducting a research into the decision-making behavior of these investors in the renewable energy sector. The research aims to get more insights in how these investors perceive risks and how they make an investment decision. My research focuses on 3 types of investors: venture capital funds, business angels, and corporate venture capital parties. This slide shows some examples of these investors. The research firstly focuses on how these investors assess and have a preference for risks, and secondly, how this relates to how they make an investment decision. Evaluating and choosing between different types of risks is probably one of the most important psychological functions of the human system. Human beings have developed mechanisms in order to reduce the impact of risks. In the evaluation of a venture, investors adopt screening techniques with various criteria in order to assess the quality of a startup and to reduce the impact of investing in an unsuccessful one. But what are these criteria and how do these investors differ from each other? I recently met an informal investor or a business angel active in the renewable energy sector. And after years of experience in developing large-scale wind energy projects, he had collected enough capital in order to start investing in early-stage tech. When I asked him about his motivation, he told me that he liked it, because through these ventures he could share his experience and knowledge about the industry. He had invested in 3 potential breakthrough technologies, such as the torrefaction of biomass and the generation of wind energy from kites. But after our talk, I couldn't stop thinking how it was possible that an individual, informal investor like him saw these great opportunities, took the risk, and invested. Where are the larger institutional investors and the industry leaders? And why are they so hesitant to invest? In interviews with venture capital funds and industry leaders, more focus was either given to smart grid or software-related technologies, as these ventures showed clearer exit opportunities, required less capital, and showed shorter exit times. Energy investment is misaligned with where the world appears to be heading, and also far out of step with where it needs to go. It's not about the contribution of an individual like this informal investor. All industry leaders and institutional investors should step up their game. And the next generation has to be involved, as they will provide the talent and innovation needed in order to tackle this challenge. Because if you look around now, you'll realize that most of the people here will not be there till the end of the energy transition. Investing in the next generation talent is therefore highly important. I therefore am a proud ambassador of Initiate. The Initiate program is committed to stimulate the transformation of the renewable energy sector from the power generation side by including all parties in the ecosystem with the intention to catapult the industry forward. Initiate looks at acquiring new talents and forming new partnerships to create positive change. If you'd like to hear more about Initiate, please come visit us at the Initiate Startup Pavilion. The photo on the slide shows a picture from the Dutch cleantech sector of a few years ago. It shows a group of enthusiastic young people, passionate to take the challenge and contribute to the energy transition. Because we're not there yet, the leaders of today have to embrace the technologies of the future. I would like to ask you all to invest, stimulate, and give entrepreneurs and young talent a chance. In that way, I believe that the energy sector as a whole can make a difference. Thank you.
Noortje, thank you very much. Thank you. Before you go, I think you've issued a bit of a challenge, and I'd like to know that the room has heard the challenge, because that is why you are here. You want to integrate, you want to talk about your ideas, your thoughts, and you have people who are ready to have those conversations, yeah?
Yes, indeed.
What would work really well for you? At the end of this week, what would you like to walk away from here knowing something really great has happened? What could it be?
I would like to ask if it's possible that every industry leader, utility, or someone from the industry goes back, walks into their corporate venture capital departments and tell them, listen, there has to be more risk capital available for investing in these startups because we need them and we have the money to do so. So that would be an amazing outcome for me this week.
Okay, how many hands would you now like to see raised if I asked the room if they were happy and proactively would like to come and talk to you, talk to your team, and then go back and take that message to the business? How many hands would you like to see?
I would like to see all hands.
Okay, well, who will actually pledge today to go through to Initiate, to talk to some of the startups, to talk about some of the ideas that they have, and then talk about where the money comes from? Please raise your hand if you are willing to do that.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. And I've seen hands right at the back. I've seen hands here as well. Are you and your team in the room for a bit longer?
Yes, of course.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, we're going to break for lunch at 12:30. I would strongly advise you to go and speak to Noortje and then make maybe some interviews and some meetings later.
Thank
you.
you.
For the moment, from Initiate, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to talk about the DSOs and the transition there and the role that the DSOs can play as neutral digital platforms for the energy transition. So I'm very pleased to say that from EDSO, we have here EDSO for Smart Grids, the chairman, Christian Bouchal.
I tried to, okay, thank you very much. The very good news we have just seen through Noortje that young talents are investing their intelligence in our sector. So, dear colleagues, partners, stakeholders of our industry, ladies and gentlemen, in less than a decade, first to say that this European Utility Week has become really a must. So, Paddy, thanks very much. It's written outside: innovates, disrupts, creates, connects, inspire. This is exactly this what you came here for. So in several years, the panels and the booths gather more and more technology and service provider, not only from the energy sector, but more and more from communication industry. It demonstrates how fast our sector is changing. On DSO side, on a European scale, we combine already on a daily basis energy, IT, and communication. In the energy transition and the whole energy value chain, DSOs as probably those who have to transform themselves most radically. It has been said by Cedric, the grid was not built, was not designed for this kind of use. We become clearly technology and communication platforms operator in the service of consumers, suppliers, and generators, and we do our best to allow a very active market. We are 2,400 DSOs directly in Europe, and we directly employ more than 300,000 people in Europe. EDSO members leading this DSO industry in Europe operate in 25 European countries, connect more than 350 million customers, and on generation side, nearly 300 gigawatts solar and wind power. To give you a flavor of the impressive connection challenge, it has been said by Philippe Monlebout this morning, Solar Power Europe, the figures from Solar Power Europe, our friends, say that more than 10 gigawatts net new addition year per year with 20% faster growth than the year before. And it will be continue. Another figure to illustrate the historical momentum that we are currently experiencing, we as DSOs invest roughly 17 billion euros a year. Nevertheless, leading means much more than dealing with impressive figures. Leading, colleagues, leading means being digital, data focused as we are for a year on electrons. Leading means investing massively not only in money, but also in skills and talents. Leading means allowing disruption and quick industrialization of the new ways to generate and to consume electricity. Leading means fostering electrification in the world. Leading, in a nutshell, means enabling active and fair energy transition. But energy requires an adequate level playing field. EDSO for Smart Grid, our European association, the trusted voice of the DSOs in Europe, handles policy issues and bridges EU policymakers and the industry players. Altogether, we contribute to build the regulatory framework citizens are looking for and act to achieve EU climate targets. The Clean Energy Package voted this year illustrates this well. We brought our commonly developed expertise with a lot of stakeholders here in this room to help the member states, the Commission, the Parliament, and the ACER to settle the ambitious objective in this package. Actually, this historical package goes further in cooperation and gives us the mandate to establish an expert sister entity to ENSOE, the TSO organization, the so-called new EU DSO entity. It is currently in creation and will, I hope, soon start factoring DSO's expertise and providing the network codes and the standards needed to accelerate the industrialization of smart grids. This entity will also strengthen the confident cooperation developed between the DSOs and the TSOs. This allows us to be optimistic regarding the implementation of adequate and sophisticated digital platform. Unfortunately, I must tell it here, by design, these EU DSO entities largely overregulated, and the current discussions are not enough industrial driven and focused. We do everything on our side, so it will be an agile, cost-effective and entrepreneurial-driven entity. For us, this is absolutely key in Europe and somehow a condition to take part of it. At the same time, the clean energy package also presents DSOs with further responsibilities. Some of them were part of our business already, while others are updated or entirely new. The role of the DSOs as neutral market facilitator is strengthened. The importance of flexibility and procurement of related services by DSOs is strongly established in the new electricity market design. The clean energy package also gives a legal framework to the new models of consumption, putting the customer at the center, such as collective and individual self-consumption, but also, it is clearly in the package, the so-called citizen energy communities. Members of it, so some of the DSOs are here in this room, are already dealing very actively these new DSO responsibilities. But new challenges are also coming. As the president of the new European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, wants Europe to become the world's first climate-neutral continent. Our association has already proposed, it was several days ago, to the new Energy Commissioner, Kadri Simpsons, to implement concretely this legislation and to take part in the European Green Deal. Innovation will pave the way to carbon neutrality. Together with our industrial partners, and you are all in this room, European DSOs have already taken the lead in smart grid innovation through large-scale coordinating projects. We welcome very strongly our common work in research and innovation, and we thank the Commission for the support we get through EU-funded projects. It is crucial to define, test, implement smart technologies and disruptive solutions. As today, EDSO for Smart Grid has been involved in 11 EU-funded projects, and our members participate in many more. Some examples: the Coordinate project, for instance, addresses two key issues: DSO-TSO coordination and customer empowerment. It demonstrates how DSO and customer together can best coordinate to produce flexibility grid services. Moreover, to put consumer at the center, Intensis for EU and other projects aims at turning the European Commission Strategy Energy Technology Plan into reality through a streamlined and efficient European energy system. It successfully rolls out digitalization, and it has been said this morning, very important, the sector coupling, to couple electricity, heating, and other energy, I would say, especially in the big cities. New concepts also emerge. In the mobility sector, Brainport Eindhoven demonstrator in the Netherlands, one of the 5 European use cases from the Interflex project, is already these days testing the traffic networks, which allows autonomous vehicles to participate in normal traffic and traffic lights to give personalized advice to smoothen traffic flow. All these projects cannot be led out without a smart distribution grid at their foundation. The complex digital platform needs an access to reliable and high-resolution information, which could not exist without a robust and ambitious smart meter rollout across the continent and the world. DSOs in Europe have already installed 100 million smart meters, and deployments are still in progress. In Portugal, the 3rd generation in Italy. It has been said in France, Enedis is installing nearly 30,000 meters a day. New technologies such as artificial intelligence and learning machines are the very first step of an upcoming transformation in the energy sector. For sure, it will enable innovation and breakthroughs far beyond what we can imagine today. It is why some of you may be here today on behalf of your company, on behalf of your organization, to represent these very specific niches, emerging services, or high disruptive technologies. Indeed, you are all grid users and need digital, smart, but also resilient networks. This vital role which the DSO silently but continuously play in the background of any striving economy and society for security of supply would not be possible without investments. Without investments, we have seen some figures this morning. How can we develop R&I, digital platforms, cybersecurity infrastructures? How can we turn into increased volume of renewable resources into smart services, advanced business cases, and local energy communities? How can we be cost efficient with remote sensing, self-healing networks, and coupling across sectors and industries? Yes, we have to invest intensively in IT and cyber technologies to become the data operators dealing with petabytes needed by the customers and requested by the market players, the territories and the cities. As I have said at the very beginning of this keynote, transforming our sector will require billions of investments. Our shareholders, whatever their business model is, need to be convinced that these billions of euros are definitely good investments. This is a clear message for our national regulators and for Acer. Some of our members currently negotiate their grid tariff with their regulators, like in Finland or in France. Our clear message to the regulator is fair and smart tariffs are an absolutely must to reach the European climate goals. What will be the future look like? One thing only is certain for the coming years: the changes ahead are huge and have to be commonly faced. It has been just said before, no company can do it alone. We have to commonly face this challenge. The DSOs are strongly committed to prepare the grid future well to smart technology and innovate use cases. We are already taking into account the lesson learned in the 2 last years from European projects. We are already industrializing all those innovations like digital twins, like data platforms, to make disruption possible for all grid users. Our common commitment as DSOs in Europe is to ensure a fair energy transition for all actors, but also increase social and political acceptance. We have seen in France how important it is. All of you in this room are our stakeholders. We owe you more than power. We have to help you to take full advantage of the ongoing transition. Definitely, our sector is becoming a really fascinating one and attracts more and more young talents. It is definitely an amazing period for all of us, building the leading industry in green technology and services to contribute to the ambitious climate targets of the Paris Agreement. Dear friends, what a fantastic challenge. With all the CEOs from the DSOs here in Europe, they attend this event. I'm looking forward to debating these issues with you in the coming days. And I wish you all an inspiring and a very connecting utility week. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And I hope you and your team will be around later if anyone wants to come and have a chat with you as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to move on now to green renewable energy supplier. We're going to talk about global infrastructure and networks now. I'm very pleased to say that to talk about how to enable a clean future from NL Green Power, we have in the room Livio Gallo.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Can you listen to me? More or less? Okay. I would like to thank, first of all, on behalf of the VN Group for invitation, for the opportunity to be here. Thank you very much. Enabling a clear future the power of electricity. We think that energy is the answer to the society expectations. As you heard from the previous speakers, the forecasts of the past have always underestimated the growth of renewables by even 50%, because they have not been able to anticipate the technology leaps of the future. And over the past 10 years, the investment on renewables have always doubled. This is a fact. And so the energy transition is now the answer of our sector to those multiple and complex issues, as well to society's expectations, to devise quickly concrete and scalable solutions. We think that the power sector is showing real leadership throughout the energy transition. We are convinced of that. RES are gaining shares in the world, are gaining capacity and generation mix driven by cost reduction and increasing cost effectiveness, and we heard from the previous speaker, as we all are convinced. And the transition, we think, is driven by an exponential growth of technologies. First of all, by the progress in material sciences. Progress in material sciences was, is, and will be very important. A drastic decrease in RES generation costs and in other key transition technologies. Digitalization, the second key lever, will play a major role in redefining the production, distribution, sales, consumption, and participation of the customer in an active way to the energy market. Electricity is increasingly becoming versatile thanks to the digitalization. And as a result, we are convinced that no energy carrier can really curb emissions to the same extent and scale as electricity. Now, electricity and digitalization. Only in 2018, they've been investing more than 300 billion in transmission and distribution, and the investment in the digital solution, in smart grids, smart meters, electric vehicles charging, cybersecurity have increased by 10% in the networks compared to 2017. Digitalization will revolutionize our industry as well, redefining our traditional paradigms of producing, distributing, and consuming electricity. The distributors, as we heard from Christian Buchel, are at a crucial moment because the energy transition is shaping the future electricity system, and the traditional meaning of demand and supply is becoming to be overcome. And the distribution grids will have a key and will have a pivotal role in defining the future of the energy system. DSOs have now the chance to exploit the distribution flexibility resources coming from renewables, procuring flexibility services voltage support, congestion management, and they can optimize system operation and minimize the need for future grid investments for the benefits, of course, of the distributions, of the customer, but of the whole society. DSO act, as you, I think, know, as neutral facilitator, not only performing their core activities related to the distribution system, but also providing, or will provide, high-resolution price signals to the market players that own such flexibility. I think this is a very, very important role. To accelerate the transition, we think that the utilities should leverage on new opportunities brought by these new trends. We are convinced that it requires a full integration of sustainability into strategy and an open innovation approach to deploy faster, sustainable, competitive solutions involving subjects also beyond our traditional perimeter. To this extent, we as Enel, we have adopted an open innovability model, which we are presenting here, that allows to carry out innovation in an ecosystem perspective with startup, university, NGOs, non-energy industries, of course, institutions, customers, and all the society. By making sustainability the engine of our innovation model, we are able to tackle today's societal challenges in a measurable and business-sound way, creating long-term share value for all stakeholders. We are focusing mainly in these 4 SDGs. The number 4, quality education of our people, of the customer, of people working with us. The 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, which is mainly related to the asset owner, like generation and renewables, and infrastructure and network. Decent work and economic growth, climate actions, and affordable and clean energy, of course, by using of renewables, and the 11, sustainable cities and communities. Of course, we are also working in all the SDG. We are brought up by United Nations. And in this context, we have just issued the world's first general purpose SDG linked bond program. The first general purpose SDG linked bond program, linking the company's sustainability strategy performance to the securities envisaged performance. We already integrated in our strategy all the aspects related to the SDGs, and in this area they are key for the sustainable and inclusive energy transition. The need for a fair transition. The rate of this transition is so fast that all of us, as we heard also before, we need to cooperate. No company can stand it on alone. So that the radical changes to our societies can materialize gradually in a planned and smooth manner. This is a key to capture the big opportunity arising from this change of paradigm. Companies, as we said, cannot do this alone. But we need a consistent, and also we heard for the president of IRENA, a policy framework which will be sustainable, well connected, and look into the future. National government and institutions, we think, will have to first show always an higher ambition on competitive renewables or deployment of competitive renewables, and tackle more strongly the issue of long-term investment signals for clean transition technology. Second, keep shifting public policy from the short to the long term, while adopting a broader, more farsighted approach also in the domain of new technologies and new business models. And in this respect, we think that the new business model of a DSO will play a pivotal and major role. Third, to deal responsibly with existing fossil fuel asset base in order to ensure the security of the power supply of a system at any time. Eventually, government, institutions, and business companies will have to increase efforts to engage all stakeholders, all the consumer, the whole society. At the end, we all jointly, institutions, governments, and companies have to work hard and motivated to achieve together these sustainable goals. Grazie. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on now to our last keynote presentation before our panel to end us this morning. I'm very delighted to say that we have somebody here from a multinational to talk about how the really big companies are adapting and moving forward and changing and answering maybe a lot of questions that you probably have in the room. So I'm very pleased to say from Shell this morning, we have the Executive Vice President of New Energies, Mark Gainsborough.
Great, thanks for that intro, Sasha. And I'm not planning to speak for too long, because I know you've all been sitting down for quite a while already, but I wanted to really build on some of the remarks from earlier on in the morning. I think we're all agreed we're on a major voyage in terms of energy transition. I think one of our previous speakers from Siemens was raising the challenge of are we doing and are consumers doing enough personally to be engaged in this? So I thought I'd just start with a poll of the audience. Who in the audience drives a conventional internal combustion engine vehicle? Hands up if you do. I have to admit I have one. And hands up if you don't have a vehicle at all. Just to see the really green folk in the room. Well done, Nortia, at the front here. And who drives an electric vehicle at the moment? Very good. Okay, a few. I'd like to see many more electric vehicle drivers on the basis that at Shell we bought 2 EV charging businesses, and I need to get them profitable at some point in the future. So really, I'm looking forward in 5 years' time when we come to this sort of event that many, many people in the audience will put their hands up. But great to be here today. Great to be in Paris. Of course, it's nearly 4 years ago that 25 kilometers away from here, UN delegates from 195 countries announced they'd reached an historic agreement on climate change. And I think that agreement was a very striking example of international partnership. And that's the theme I want to come back to, because I think we've heard from the previous speakers this morning that for the energy transition to happen, it'll take partnerships on an unprecedented scale, both between businesses and governments, and between businesses and consumers. But the Paris Agreement was key. It set a clear direction and timetable for society to limit the rise of global average temperatures and move towards a lower carbon energy system. And it remains an excellent illustration of how partnerships can unlock new possibilities. Now, interestingly, a few months after the climate change agreement was reached in Paris, 2 startups were at the European Utility Week that year, and both were sharing their vision of a lower carbon future. One was a German battery company. Its Bavarian co-founder had a dream that one day every home would be powered by self-generated solar electricity, regardless of the weather or the time of day. The other startup was a British technology company whose co-founder saw a system with decentralized energy in the future from a digital network of wind farms, solar farms, and hydro plants, supplying power directly to customers in the UK. And today, both of these companies, Sonnen and LimeJump, are realizing their ambitions. Sonnen is now Europe's largest maker of rechargeable energy storage packs and is selling more and more of its systems to customers across Europe, the USA, and Australia. And LimeJump is managing around 1 gigawatt of power on what it calls the virtual energy market, enough to supply electricity to around 2 million homes in the UK. Both companies are helping the world in its transition to a lower carbon future. Both companies are scaling new heights that they may not have reached alone, and both companies are now part of Shell. They've both joined the new energies business, which I run within Shell. And I was very pleased to hear the focus from Nortje, one of our previous speakers, on startup companies. I think one of the challenges we have is not only the innovation that comes and the capital that comes from large companies, but it's combining that with the innovation that comes from small startup companies like Sonnen and LimeJump. So Shell's new energies business was formed in 2016. It brought together two strands of activity in Shell. One was the work that we've been doing for a number of years around lower carbon molecules, around lower carbon transport fuels like hydrogen and biofuels. The other strand of work was around the role of electricity in decarbonizing the world's energy system. And as you've heard from the previous speakers, for us to be successful in the energy transition to a low carbon future, the only way we can get there is with deep, deep electrification of the energy system in all sectors: transport, buildings, industry, and everything else around us. So when we brought together the new energies business in Shell after the Paris Agreement, it gave us a chance to think more deeply about how Shell could build a low-carbon power business that would allow us to thrive in the uncertain future in front of us. And we knew that to thrive in that way would require partnership, and it would require change within Shell. I think bringing companies like Sonnen and LimeJump into our family has certainly meant change. I'm sure that it's change for those companies in terms of us being able to bring our scale, footprint, brand, and resources to help them change and develop in a way that enables their growth. But I'm equally certain that bringing in companies like that with their entrepreneurial spirit and agility and innovation has also brought change into Shell as well. And indeed, that's one of the missions and one of the passions that I have for the new energies business, is it has to be a catalyst for change within Shell as well as to change within the energy system as a whole. So I think we have great opportunities for partnerships that bring a fusion of talent and expertise, bring financial resources to bear, and allow these businesses to scale up. And I think from our very first presentation this morning from Irina, it highlighted that we shouldn't be too complacent about the amount of change that is required in the energy system. We have to double the amount of investment going into these new areas if we're going to work in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement. Let me give you another example. Last week here in Paris, our wind power team finalized an agreement to acquire a company called Eolfi. Eolfi is a French company specializing in the development of floating wind farms. It helps us to build our presence in the sector. You've probably seen, those of you that follow the renewable power market, the Shell has been actively going into offshore wind. We have an existing project we're constructing in the Netherlands in the North Sea. We just got awarded a PPA to allow us to build another project on the east coast of the US. And we think that the full potential of offshore wind will be realized when we can go into deeper waters using floating technology. So we think that's a crucial step on making progress in that part of the market. And working in partnership with Eolfi will help us to develop that market much faster than we could have done by ourselves. So I think that's going to be a fantastic partnership going forwards. And do watch this space. I'm sure we'll have further exciting announcements in the wind business going forwards. There will be more ahead. In the UK, last year, we acquired First Utility, which in March we rebranded to Shell Energy. That's a residential power supplier in the UK. We've just announced our plan to acquire another 200,000 customers through Hudson Energy as well. So we're supplying residential and B2B customers in the UK market. So what does that mean for customers? It means more choice. It means more low-carbon options. And for them, the spirit of partnership means more possibilities. So could it be that in time a Shell customer could charge their electric vehicle in one of our forecourts, store power in their home with a Sonnen battery, have their broadband provided through Shell Energy, and trade surplus solar energy through a company like LimeJump? Well, it's not quite there yet, but it's not far off. And certainly that bringing together of these multiple opportunities is part of the plan and what it takes to create a modern power company for the future. The spirit of partnership creates opportunities in the developing world as well. One of the things we're very mindful of in Shell as we think about sustainable development goals is there are many people around the world that do not take it for granted that they can access reliable electricity. The fact that we can go and plug in anytime we want, we can charge our iPhone wherever we want, we have electricity available to us for productive use is not available to many hundreds of millions of people around the world. And we've set ourselves an ambition of supplying reliable power to 100 million people in the developing world by 2030. So this is for people who live in communities where they don't have reliable access to power today. We believe that solutions are available and we're finding the right companies to work with. You may have noticed that last week we announced we're investing in PowerGen, a microgrid company operating in Africa with a mission to build the energy system of the future in Africa. And around 600 million people in Africa live without any reliable electricity supply. We've made a number of other investments. Earlier last year, we invested in Husk, a company which operates mini-grids in India and Tanzania, using solar power plus batteries plus biomass gasification to provide 24/7 power at a very reasonable cost to those communities. Last week, we also announced that we'll be investing in D-Light, which is a company in Kenya that provides solar home systems and operates in more than 70 countries around the world. So these investments mean new partnerships that bring new possibilities to transform lives and change the energy system. But of course, we're not acting entirely out of altruism here. We think that these new partnerships will create new value for Shell. And to understand where Shell is coming from, it helps to understand the strategic steps that we're taking. Our strategic ambitions are clear. We need to be a world-class investment case, which means staying financially resilient through the energy transition. We want to thrive in energy transition and maintain a strong societal license to operate. We understand that the world is changing in response to climate change, and we're determined to do the right in step with society as it changes and as our customer needs change in that process. That's why we back the EU target to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. So we absolutely have to play our part in the energy transition to a lower carbon future. That is why we've announced a global ambition to reduce the carbon intensity of the products we sell by 20% by 2035 and around 50% by 2050. We call this our net carbon footprint ambition. Now, that ambition includes all of the emissions that come with the production of our energy products, what in the carbon jargon is called Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. But we've gone a step further than that, and we've said that we will also look to reduce the carbon intensity of so-called Scope 3 emissions, which are the emissions that come when our customers use our product. So, of course, energy and demand and supply must evolve together. And that's because no business can survive unless the customers buy the things that it supplies. So we have to stay in tune with society as it moves towards the goals of the Paris Agreement. And if our philosophy is if the customer demand changes faster, we need to be ready to aid that acceleration. If it changes more slowly, then we'll maybe have to go at a more measured pace than we would otherwise do. So our net carbon footprint is very much tied to the rate at which the world is successful at decarbonizing. We have partnerships in other areas as well, and I think one of the things that we're mindful of is to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement, we have to pull every lever that is available to us for decarbonization. So although deep electrification is very important, so are low carbon molecules, and so is using the natural environment to help with decarbonization. One of the things we've done is we've earmarked $300 million over the next 3 years to invest in what we call nature-based solutions, which are projects that protect or redevelop natural ecosystems, natural climate sinks, And during this period, we plan to plant at least 2 million trees and hopefully many more. And one of the things we've started to explore more and more is offering our customers the opportunity to be carbon neutral through the carbon offsets generated by these projects. And earlier this year, we launched carbon neutral driving offers for our customers in the Netherlands and the UK. And we've also supplied LNG cargoes carbon neutral with carbon offsets involved as well. So that's another dimension beyond electrification where we think we can make a difference. Next year, we expect to spend up to 2 billion a year on our new energies business, most of that earmarked for growing in power. And what we look to do over time is to scale that up to between 2 and 3 billion a year. Now, I know these are big, abstract numbers, but what they translate into, in reality, are new partnerships and a spirit of partnership with companies like Sonnen, LimeJup, and Aelfi as examples that I've given today. Quite possibly, it means partnerships with many of the companies represented in this room, and I do hope that out of the conference, we'll find new partners to work with. Clearly, we're going into a world that requires lower carbon electricity, lower carbon molecules. We've heard about the need for long-duration storage. I completely agree with previous speakers who have said that hydrogen will have a tremendous role to play in the future, and that's something that we're quite excited about at Shell. So in summary, it's a world where transition will require new partnerships. We're already partnering with many companies. We look forward to partnering with many more in the future. And let's hope that the theme of energy transition is vibrant, and we're all passionate about it during the rest of this conference. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much. Thank you. And if I could ask while I just do the next introduction, if my next panel could just come and join me on stage, just to save some time, and I will introduce you as you come up. So if my next panel could come and join me. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do now is talk about some of the challenges in the industry, bring onto stage some of the players within the industry that actually can make the difference and can share their opinions with you. So please welcome on stage Chris Peters, Thierry Trovet, Olivier Grabet, Philippe Montbalou again, and Joël Torres. Gentlemen, if you'd like to come and join us, thank you. Thank you very much, lovely. Now, what I am going to do is ask all of you to take literally just a couple of moments to introduce yourselves fully. We'll get some microphones to you all. Fantastic, lovely, thank you. So just introduce yourself, and for those in the room who may not be aware of your company or maybe the geography in which you operate, if you could just say where you are based as well. Let's start and go along the room.
I'm Chris Peters, CEO of Elia Group. We are a TSO which is active in the whole region of Belgium and the east of Germany with our affiliate 50 Hertz.
Chris, thank you very much.
I'm Olivier Grabet from RTE. I act as a deputy CEO of RTE, which is the French TSO.
Thierry Trouvet, CEO of GRT Gaz. GRT Gaz is the French gas TSO operating in France and also operating in the south of Germany. And we also have a subsidiary which operates 3 of the 4 LNG terminals in France.
Thierry, thank you.
Yes, Philippe Montbalou, I'm the CEO of Enedis, the French power distribution power grid, so at the French scale.
I'm John Torres. I'm an electrical engineer. I like to say that. And I'm for 40 years in the industry, almost 40 years in the industry. I'm the CEO of EDP Distribuição. It's the Portuguese DSO for 14 years.
Fantastic, thank you. I have a feeling the electrical engineer was the very important bit there for you.
And I really engage in EDSO for smart grids at the European level for the last 10 years.
Thank you. If I could encourage all panelists to hold the microphone really close to their mouth because it is such a very big room here. Gentlemen, I would like to go along the line and ask each of you to, in one word, and I insist on one word, what you feel the biggest challenge in the industry is, and then I will be asking the room. So just in one word, and then we can expand later. Chris, in one word, the biggest challenge for your part of the industry?
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure, okay, thank you. Oliver?
Complexity.
So, what was?
Complexity.
Complexity, thank you. Thierry?
Affordable. Affordable.
Affordable. We're talk finance. Okay, complexity. I'm quickly making a note. Remind me what yours was, Chris? Infrastructure, thank you. Philippe?
Transformation.
Transformation. And finally, Joel?
Cooperation.
Cooperation. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you can pick more than one, but let's see if you feel the biggest challenge is infrastructure. Raise your hands, please. Okay. If you feel the biggest challenge is the finance for things to be affordable, please raise your hands. Okay. The complexity, and I'm assuming that's the complexity of all operations. Okay. This is interesting because we've got a concentration of hands down here and maybe a few over there as well. Transformation. Yeah, okay. And the final one was cooperation. Thank you. I can't read my own writing. Cooperation. Yeah. I think they're all fairly equal, but I think cooperation and actually what we've talked about as we've gone through. You five can have an argument in a moment as to who you feel got the most hands up. But building those areas and building those relationships. I've got microphones in the room. Would somebody else like to give me another challenge? They think the biggest challenge for the moment. Please raise your hand. Or are you happy with the 5 that we've got? Is there nothing else that you think is a challenge? Goodness me, we could be done. Right, the gentleman there. Would you like to shout out for me? Regulation. Who else agrees with regulation? Regulation, maybe a few. Yeah, lovely. Gentleman down here, would you like to shout out for me the biggest challenge? You, sir, there. Go on, give it a shout. Decarbonisation. Okay. Raise your hands if decarbonisation is the biggest challenge that we have at the moment. I would have thought maybe everyone would have possibly agreed with that. Anyone else want to shout out a challenge for us? Opacity. Yeah, okay, so people don't understand, or it's very difficult for people to understand what it is that they really want to get to. Gentleman over there? Yeah, I'm going to need a microphone for that one.
The customer. The customer.
The customer. Domestic customer? Possibly. Okay, anyone else want to agree with domestic customer? Maybe education as well. Lots of different views. Thierry, tell me why you picked the one that you did.
I choose affordability because I think that it has a cost for the customers, any kind of customers, and if it is too expensive, it will fail. And we cannot fail in this energy transition. We need to find appropriate solutions that are feasible, that are not too expensive. And from that point of view, we have a main challenge to tackle, which is the question of flexibility and storage. And as I'm a gas guy, I have to say that even if electricity will be the big winner of this energy transition, it is obvious, nevertheless, we will need to have some, some molecules, and molecules for flexibility and storage. And the good news is that we have a lot of infrastructure, so it's one of the first words, and we have those existing infrastructure to help us for this challenge.
Chris, you picked, your one was the complexity, yeah.
No, infrastructure.
Infrastructure, yes, that's what I thought. So why did you go for infrastructure?
Well, we have, in our part of the sector, 2 main challenges in infrastructure. The first one is about making sure that we connect bulk renewables to demand centers, and that is demanding infrastructure in places which are complex on the one hand, so offshore on the other hand, where we have a lot of public acceptance issues to make it happen. Everybody is agreeing with the energy transition, but not necessarily by having infrastructure nearby, and so that is a big challenge to build all the needed infrastructure to bring those renewables to the client. And the second infrastructure issue that we have, or challenge that we have, is digitalization, where we need to build out a digital infrastructure to ensure that customers can adjust their demands and can put their production onto the system as well, which is something where today we see that there are not yet clear opinions and everybody's a little bit fighting for data, while the consumer is a little bit missing that infrastructure to make that happen.
Joao, let me bring you in on that one. Infrastructure, is that an issue for you in Portugal?
Yes, it's always. In fact, with this energy transition, we are now dealing with different challenges in a way to integrate, especially to integrate renewables. The grid and all the system changed a lot in the last 20 years, especially from medium voltage. Now we have a great challenge in low voltage. It is alive. I used to say that now the last mile is alive. And we need to invest on this to keep the lights on. Because at the end of the day, we need to be affordable, we need to be efficient, but we need to be reliable. So it's a key issue, and it connects with the question of regulation, and we need to get the right incentive in a way that our company can invest in a stable and fair perspective in the future.
You say you need the right incentive.
Yes.
How do you describe that? What would that be for you?
For companies like the DSOs and TSOs that are regulated companies, what we wish is a stable and that we can make plans in an easy way, and it comes from regulation. In the beginning of this story of Startgates 10 years ago, I used to say smart regulation, but now I just request dynamic regulation in a way to go with us in this big transition that we have in front of us.
Philippe, I saw you nodding and you were listening in on that one. What about infrastructure for you?
Yes, I used to say that our business was a linear and long-term business. It became within less than 10 years real-time and systemic business. This is a huge transformation for our industry. And that's why I've chosen transformation. Yeah. If you had allowed 2 words, I would have said acceleration of transformation, because this is the huge challenge we have, not only in our industry, but also how to enable our environment, especially, for example, customers, it has been said as a key word, but also local authorities. That may allow us to enlarge our responsibility and also to deeper help those different stakeholders to accelerate their way to address and to tackle the huge challenge, which is energy transition. And it occurred within only the last less than 10 years. But we have a very short term to be able to tackle 2030 objectives. That's why I've chosen transformation.
Olivier, let me bring you in. Before we talk about what it was that you chose, acceleration. How do you accelerate your part of the industry?
The acceleration is the combination of different factors. So first, we have an urgency to act. In fact, we all know today the challenge that we are facing. And also with the strong development of innovation in our business, and especially in technology, digital technology. In fact, we have a fast acceleration of the possible world. And one of the issues is to choose the right way, in fact. And it's the reason why I speak about complexity, because what we have to do is not only to consider energy transition and to substitute non-fossil source to fossil sources, but also to consider all the dimensions. Technological, and we have a lot of new technology, innovation to integrate and keeping at each stage the quality and the reliability of the service. But we also have to consider economical issues about strong investment to be done, but also to consider how to fight against energy poverty. But at the same time, we have also to consider ecological aspects and how in the technology that we do use, we help to regenerating the nature, how we can fight against biodiversity erosion and that. So it's why our task is so complex, and perhaps some of the technologies that are available today to face the energy transition, in fact, will create tomorrow some other problem in another field, and we have to consider all of that from now.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to open the floor now to questions from you. If you would like to ask a question of our panel, please raise your hand, and I'm going to get a microphone to you. So if you would like to raise your hand for the next question, we have a gentleman down here. Did I see another one at the back? Can you just raise your hand again for me if I did? Okay, lovely. We're going to get one here, but before we come to that question, let me take one from Slido. This one is about data, and I think data, I don't think it's really been talked about that much today, maybe alluded to, but data is part of our world now, and you have to have security of data, you have to manage the flow of data and actually use the data properly so that you get the benefit of it. Philippe, I can see you nodding already, so would you like to take this question? How do you deal with the huge flow of data and the need for data analysis in this world?
Yes, data is one of the big challenges we have to tackle, and it's part of this acceleration. Who can imagine that less than 10 years ago in this room, nobody would have spoken about cybersecurity, even security of data. Now we have, for example, in Enidis, we had in 2016 9,000 servers. Within 2023, tomorrow, we'll have more than 30,000. That's something unimaginable only a couple of years ago. That means that the size of the challenge we have with data. But it's not only technical. That's why transformation is something very important in our industry. It's how our own staff, our own skills get used with the way to utilize data in their common job, in their common neighborhood, with all stakeholders, as I said. Because data today, every day, a majority of local authorities, for example in France, are asking us for data with new perimeter of data, with a new amount of data, with day-to-day data, even infra-day data. That's an exceptional challenge. Who would have imagined that we are now a big data operator as a DSO? These are huge challenges. We are facing these challenges. We have now introduced new talents, new skills in our companies, but the road is no longer, as we used to say, it's now we have to do to tackle this challenge, this transformation. That's why, as it has been said this morning, open innovation, using these new talents which are in startups is absolutely necessary. It's the only way to tackle the challenge and to reduce the time schedule with the objective of 2030 or another one.
I think it's very interesting how many companies would probably say that their role has changed from the traditional company they are now data companies. And that is true for so many different industries. So gentleman down here with a question. Would you like to introduce yourself first, please, sir?
Richard Schomburg with EDF and also the IEC Standard Development Organization. Of course, renewables is something fantastic, and we all wish to actually even deploy more and more and more renewables. But at the same time, what is not enough said is that there is a lot of power electronics that goes with the renewables, which means that, of course, these power electronics might actually bring a lot of noise and annoyance for many things on the electric network, but even more critical is that actually we are, and we heard here, that the electric system now is systemic, real-time, complex, and we need to balance this electric system. And the power electronics is not the best and the easiest mean to balance each and every time. Actually, at the frequency of this alternative current, balance the grid, and this is where we used to have very heavy rotating machines to actually provide this stability. So the question to the panel is, how can we dream of even more renewable deployment and at the same time have a reasonable plan to guarantee and keep a lot of this good inertia?
Yeah, keep the lights on, I imagine. Gentlemen, who would like to take that? Yeah, of course. Chris, please go for it.
If we look at that problem, and I zoom then in on our German affiliate in Eastern Germany, today already we are around 60% of renewables over the year in terms of energy consumption, which means that we have moments that we are actually running half of, well, 1/3 of Germany in terms of surface, purely on renewables and exporting to the other regions at this point of time. That being said, I would agree with you that there is still some challenges. We further move that up towards the 80% kind of level. But as we have seen, let's say 5 to 10 years ago, we were already saying like 20 to 30% will be challenging to keep it stable. And each time we have found new ways of working. So it's a continuous target on which we're working. I think inertia is an important element, what you said. You address the element of rotating machines, which create a lot of inertia, which we are losing little by little. And that's a real concern that we have going forward. So far, we still have in the overall European system quite some, let's say, big rotating machines. When they all will be phased out, that will be something that is not an easy thing. So we will see that with the phase out in Germany in nuclear and coal, and in Belgium with nuclear, a couple of big machines will go out. So that is really where we have to watch carefully how we do it each step by each step. Now today, we are already planning additional filters, infrastructure to make sure that we stabilize the grid step by step. But I agree with you that nobody today already knows which phenomenon we still can be faced with, let's say, in the later stages of the energy transition. And that's something that we need to work as TSOs together to learn from each other and to make sure that we continue to develop on that side.
Olivier, just before you start, can I just, the next question to go to, did I see a hand over at that side of the room so we can be ready with a microphone? Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's an issue, and so we know through some R&D project that you do have some solution, but there is a very simple solution. When you dismantle, for example, a classical power plant, you keep the alternator and you keep it on the grid, and then you can use this asset to stabilize the grid. We already have done that in the past, for example, to stabilize the grid in the western part of France. So the solution, they are right available.
Olivier, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, any more questions, please raise your hands and I can be ready with a microphone. Okay, was there one further back? Someone was just scratching their head. Okay, we're going to come to a question down here in a moment, and if we can get a microphone over to that gentleman there as well. Who would like on the panel to take this one? How do you avoid massive regret in where you have invested in infrastructure? Are there areas that you feel at the moment that there could well be a lot of people pushing for particular types of infrastructure, and actually right now is not the right time to be doing it? Does anybody want to talk about investment into infrastructure? But no, there's definitely some shaking hands. Olivier, yeah.
Yes, the right time to invest? It's a real question considering the uncertainty, in fact, of the energy landscape. So it's why we do believe that the combination of the classical investment of big assets combined with the digital solution helping to provide flexibility and giving the support to build new cooperation scheme between the grid, for example, and the electric mobility or with gas is an issue, in fact, to be able to solve this period of uncertainty.
Okay. Final question in the room will be there. Thierry, just a quick word from you on that one.
Yes, on that point, I want to add something. I think that in a very near future, we can have some optimization of the investment if you take the pure electric way or the pure gas way. Maybe gas and electricity can help and can work together. And that's why today at the European level, people are talking a lot about sector coupling. And I think that what we need today is to find a way to prepare the energy investment in infrastructure in Europe with, let's say, an integrated way of planning the investment. The TYNDP that are done by ENSOE or ENSOG should be better coupled to find the best optimization for the energy system.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself first, please?
Hi, Thorsten Stechert from Copperleaf Technologies. I've got a question on your decision-making processes. I'd like to know more about, given that all these changes are happening in infrastructure and affordability and the transformation of the business, how has your decision-making process changed to kind of keep up with that? Like, how are you prioritizing, for example, traditional assets and the sustainment of the traditional grid with new technologies like smart grids? Is that factoring into the process of which alternatives you have available, and how do you see that going forward?
How do you balance your investment? Yeah. Okay. Joel, yeah.
Well, we need to manage both sides. At the same moment, we need to move by traditional assets. In fact, with a change, because at the end of the line, something is changing, and now we need our planning tools are more probabilistic than in the past. And especially, and this is another point new, about electric mobility. We don't know exactly what can happen with that, and we need to manage in a way that the investment made by the tariffs, supported by the tariffs, is adjusted. This is one point. On the other side, we are really engaged on this digital investment, because it's key for us to get information about our grid. We need to increase our observability, and with all this data that you are speaking about that came from smart meters, in a way that we can really be the enabler for the market, for a different role, for different actors that are coming to the sector.
Philippe, I could see that you just a quick point from you.
Yes, because the question has been one of the key words only a couple of minutes ago. It's about regulation. So one of the key elements in our decision as a decision maker is probably regulation. For example, with the development of self-generation, self-consumption, with the development of EV vehicle charging, we need an evolution also in the structure of the tariff, which is a key element, a key figure in the way we will be remunerated on tomorrow on our investments, on our way also to drive our investments. It's also something, it's the same case, for example, for innovation. You were saying about smart grids. Innovation is a key element. Third type of elements we need from the regulator, the remuneration on our investment, and especially on IT investments. We have huge IT investment, of course, not only for data, but also for transforming our legacies, our old system, to address agility in our IT system. That needs huge investment. So regulation and the way our remuneration is driven through new elements in the transformation, not only in the structure, but of course also on the level of the tariff and the visibility and stability also on the tariff, are some of the key elements which we need as a regulated company, as an investor in a regulated company.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, we are actually more or less out of time, but just as a final question, we have heard so much this morning about partnerships, about the need to work more together. I would just like you to literally, in one sentence, no more, to say that at the end of these few days, what would be a particular partnership that you would like to come out of it, or you feel more working together needs to be done in what particular area? I'm not asking you to name companies unless you would like to, but maybe sectors or silos or areas that you think actually do need to come more together. Joel, I'll start with you and just come straight along the line. So what would you like to see more of the working together? What areas?
Well, as I choose cooperation, I need to cooperate with everyone. Well, but in this challenge, I think could be very useful for us to understand how the retailers are using our data, our smart meters, and in a way to offer service for the customers, because they are now moving to the center, and the clean energy package is clear about that. So retailers would be my first choice.
Okay, Philippe, where should there be more working together?
Well, it could be a paradox because we are DSOs are many often national companies, but I think that we need to broaden our understanding of the way our business and DSO business is developing itself. So that's why I think we need also to go abroad, and in many countries very, very far from our reference market of reference. For example, India, for example, Indonesia, for example, Africa, it has been said, because they need to do a leapfrog just to address their growing challenges. And so that's also a way for us to learn and how to shorten also this time schedule to be able to tackle the challenges we have.
Thierry, who would you like to see working more together?
Again, I think for me it's sector coupling. Yeah. That means that we need to have heat, gas and electricity work together, better work together, and both at the European or at the national level, a better coordination between the gas guy and the power guys.
And Olivier, who would you like to see?
As a TSO is by essence a platform for cooperation, so it's difficult to choose an example, but I would like to explain that one that we launched with GIMELEC, which is an association of industrial, just to be able to have technology that are able to tackle all the problems at the same time. So we launched a new initiative, which is biomimicry for energy, how we can imagine tomorrow to develop new commons based on nature inspiration that preserve the resources.
Thank you. And Chris, final word from you.
Well, we would like to succeed with the project we launched last year together with the DSO. So there was a collaboration in Belgium between the 4 DSOs and us as TSO to launch the Internet of Energy, where we work together with 60+ commercial companies developing energy as a service. We will launch that early next year in our German affiliate. And if that will work, you will see use cases of really, let's say, managing flexibility on a very granular level within the system. And so there you have an ecosystem where today already 60+ companies are working together in Belgium only. We want to expand it to the rest of Europe and make sure that this is something that will become over time a standard where more and more people will join that initiative.
Very interesting way to end it as well. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately we are out of time. Thank you very much for your questions. I'm sorry we weren't able to get through more of them, but thank you very much to my panelists, to Chris, to Olivier, to Thierry, to Philippe and to Joel. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for a break. It is time for lunch. Can I encourage you to take all your belongings with you, because this room will actually now be reassembled for this afternoon when we start our streams later. So I hope to see you back a bit later this afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you.